Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Second Baptist Church. My name is Pastor Todd Johnson. I'm the pastor here at Second Baptist Church, and I want to welcome you all to this very special and important informational meeting and seminar that's called Tangled Titles, that deals with home ownership and the struggles that go with maintaining proper ownership throughout generations or across changes that might occur in our families and in our community. I want to welcome all of you who have come here in person and those of you who have joined us online. If you're watching us online via the Second Baptist Facebook page and YouTube page, please do me a favor and like and share this video. You might want to tag somebody who would love to be here but cannot come tonight, because there's going to be some very good information that's going to be shared here tonight, and we want to make sure that the community receives it. A little bit of housekeeping for our people who are in the room with us tonight. Afterwards, we're going to have some refreshments downstairs and maybe have some time to ask maybe some more questions beyond the session. And we'll have some refreshments downstairs, so please don't leave here without getting something. You know, church folk love to feed people, so we'll try to put something in you before you go. Also, our restrooms are in the rear of the sanctuary and right through the door to my left, your right. Make a straight right. If you go back to my office, you're in the wrong place. You want to make a direct right as soon as you go through the door, or use the rear restroom. To those who are watching online and even those who are here, I know there will be time for questions. We might not be able to get to your questions to our online friends. We might be able to read some off, maybe for answer, but I would just advise you to keep them generic and general and not put any particular information out about your situation. That's probably something you want to reserve for follow-up and follow-through at a later time. And so you don't want to be particular, put your address, phone number, social security number, and all that stuff in the comments. That's not appropriate place on social media. If any of you know how dangerous social media can be, you want to be as impersonal as possible. We're really grateful to have the partnership of Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership and Community Legal Aid who are leading this up. Would you help me give them a hand for being here and coming? And I'm going to introduce one of our representatives who is one of our own. It's family to me, and he's actually a family here at Second Baptist Church, and that's Brother Kevin Stringer, who is going to come and share some information with us and introduce our main presenter to us. Let's give him a hand as he comes.
Thank you, Pastor Todd. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership, I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Kevin Stringer. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership. And for over 15 years, TNP has worked to tackle blight and vacancy and housing challenges in the Warren community and in Trumbull County. Since our inception in 2013, property inventory, we've made great progress in demolishing over 1,200 homes here in the county and in the community, renovating 600 homes, and reducing vacant homes from 1,500 to a little bit over 400 today. Still, tangled property titles remain a major barrier for many people in this community, in and around this community, leaving families unable to secure their homes and leading to neglect and vacancy. Tonight, alongside of Community Legal Aid, and thanks to Second Baptist Church for hosting us, we're here to share some tools to resolve some of these issues. Preserve home ownership, protect your family's legacy, and together we can build a stronger, more vibrant neighborhood for our future generations. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Mrs. Patty Dugan.
Thank you. Not sure why I always have to follow the tall guy, but we'll see if we can fix that. Thank you. Another tall guy. Hi. As Kevin said, I'm attorney Patricia Dugan, Patty to all my friends and family and anyone who knows me. I'm really excited to be here tonight. This project, our neighborhood law project, is getting involved in several of these projects, and as a housing attorney at Legal Aid for the last 26 years, I've noted how often this problem comes up. In fact, in one of my first cases, when I first started at Legal Aid, my defense for my client was that the person who was trying to evict her didn't own the house. It was owned by his deceased grandmother, inherited by his deceased father, and he had never cleared the title and brought it down to himself. So that was an easy win. So as soon as I figure out, there you go. So what is Community Legal Aid? Our mission is through advocacy to help low-income people lift themselves out of poverty, increase opportunities, fairness, and so we provide free legal assistance to, in limited areas, to residents within our service area. It's a civil legal program, so we don't do criminal, we don't do traffic cases. We try to keep our justice system fair for all, regardless of how much money you have. So while some of our assistance and ability to assist is based on what people's income is, we also have some other grants that change those criteria. So for example, if you're over a certain age, there might be a grant that you can get free assistance. So, or if you're a veteran or other things. We serve 8 counties, as you can see from the map up here, and we're my office, Youngstown, and there's one in Warren and one in Akron and Canton and these other counties, but we serve primarily Trumbull, Mahoning, and Columbiana County. How can we help? These are the areas in which we can help, and there are a lot of areas on here, and we have a lot of very smart, educated, and experienced attorneys who work in our offices. We can't help everybody. We can't help everybody with everything, but feel free to call us. We'll do an analysis of your case if you qualify for our services and see what we can do to help. So one of the things that I want to make sure you understand is that we are not your attorney. This is just an educational seminar, and there is no attorney-client relationship with us, and there is no attorney-client privilege. So hence the warning to not give out all your legal information while we're talking here and it's streaming and the other people are over there, because it's out there and it's no longer private and personal and could be used in a court as evidence against you. I can't answer questions about your specific situation, but if you have some generic questions, we'll be glad to answer them. And then if you need questions answered about your specific situation, you can feel free to call us. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Tonight we're going to talk about what tangled titles are. I kind of like that title. It's kind of catchy, tangled titles. The consequences of tangled titles. Untangling tangled titles. This is becoming a test as, a tongue twister, that seashell thing. And then avoiding tangled titles. So what exactly are tangled titles? See, it's already happening. Tangled title exists when someone believes they own a property or knows that they own a property. They've been living there. It was given to them by grandma or their father or someone like that, but they never took the legal steps to actually make it their property. So in reality, it still belongs to the person who gave them the property, if that person had it legally in the first place. So how does this happen? Well, oftentimes it's because somebody died without a will and they didn't name a person on the deed to inherit the house after them. So for example, my husband and I own our house in joint survivorship. So if either one of us passes away, the house immediately becomes owned by the remaining person. They may have failed to file a transfer on death affidavit, which is a very easy way to transfer property and keep it out of probate court, and we'll talk more about that later. Sometimes there is an error in the name or a mistake in the legal description on the deed that needs to be corrected, and that can be an easy fix also. Sometimes we come across people who got involved in a land contract. They made all their payments on time. They actually own the house, but the vendor never gave them the property. never gave them the deed. They paid for it, they did everything they were supposed to do, they completed the contract, but didn't get that deed. And sometimes people pass with a will, naming someone in it, but people oftentimes just don't go to the court and make it formal and get legal title of the property. Oftentimes because they think it's costly, but there's some ways to get around that too. So what are the consequences of tangled titles? Without proper title, the current resident may be unable to tap into home equity, which is that extra money that you can pull out of your home because it has some value. They are unable to get that money for home repairs, remodeling, other expenses. Sometimes they can't get utilities on their names or get utility reduction plans such as HEAP and PIP. And people who are over 60 or disabled are also entitled to reductions on sewage and property taxes. So sometimes they kind of get mangled up in that. A tangled title may also result in you're not being able to get homeowners insurance, and that's something everyone who owns a home wants to do, is because they want to protect the value of their asset. They're oftentimes unable to communicate with the mortgage company should there be an unresolved mortgage, and we'll talk a little bit about that more, too. And they are unable to transfer a clear title in the future or sometimes to hire a contractor. And the reason they're unable to hire a contractor is you may have the money and be able to pay someone to come and do the remodeling you need in your house or put on that ramp or do whatever it is you need. But contractors like to make sure that they know that they're going to get paid. And so they want the ability to put what is called a mechanic's lien on your house if you don't pay it. And if you don't own the house and you're the one that contracted with them to do that work, they have no ability to put that mechanic's lien on there. So oftentimes the contractor will say, no, I'm not doing this. Lastly, a tangled title is a barrier to creating wealth for the owner and intergenerational wealth for their family. It also leads to disinvestment and blight in the neighborhood and in the community because people are unable to do what they need to do for their home and the asset that they own. Wealth is more than just having money. It's knowing you are financially secure, having the ability to leverage or use your assets, like the equity in your home, to gain resources and opportunities and to protect those assets you already have. It's also the ability to protect your wealth and pass it on to others, giving it down to your children, your grandchildren, maybe your next door neighbor. You might just love your next door neighbor. It doesn't necessarily have to be a family. And it gives your family a foot up on the ladder to building their own wealth as after you're gone. It's kind of something that helps everybody just get one more step up on the ladder, sometimes even more than one. And there are multiple ways to accomplish this, and home ownership is one way to do it. So untangling the tangled title. So first of all, you want to know, do you even have a tangled title? Well, first, do you have a deed at all? All right. So if someone tells you, you own my house, you can have my house when I'm gone, you can have it now, I'm going to the nursing home, whatever. Did someone give you that home and not give you the deed? So you need to find out, do I have a deed? If you don't have a deed, then you're going to want to check in your hand. You're going to want to check with the county recorder where the house is located and see whose name is on that deed. Is it your dad's? Because he's the one that told you you could have the house. Is it grandma's, great-grandma's? Whose name is on that deed? Because that's where you're going to start. Is there an error on the deed? Is your name misspelled and someone won't accept it? Is there a mistake in the legal description? Do we have to go backwards and correct that? And some mistakes in the legal description can't be fixed, but most of them can. Are the taxes in your name? Call the tax department and see whose name the taxes are in. Of course, if the bill's coming to your house, you can easily check to see whose name the taxes are in. And if you don't know, call the county treasurer where the house is located. Are you paying the mortgage in the name of another? So often, these people who have been given a home but not given the home legally move into the home or have been living there for quite some time. They're still paying the utilities in grandma's name or their dad's name or maybe their mom's name. They're still paying the mortgage, they're still paying the taxes, they're still doing all the things that a good homeowner would do to take care of their home and the community in which they live, but they don't have any rights, okay? So if you're paying a mortgage and it's not your mortgage, there's also some indicia of who owns the house. Have you been denied utilities, services, or resources available to homeowners only? And right now, there's a lot of resources available to people who have an interest in a home, and a lot of money available for those who don't have one to get one. So you should be checking those out. So, important question. Is the previous owner, now that you know who that is, still with us? And are they competent? That's important, because if grandma's in the home for people with dementia, she's not going to be able to transfer that property to you. But if she is, if she's still competent, then go and talk to her. Is it still her wish that you have the house? Then good. See if we can get a deed made. See if legal aid can help you do that. And if legal aid can't, maybe another attorney. If the answers are yes, just ask, can you deed this over to me now? That way you can access the resources that are available in the community. What if they're not still with us? That raises a couple of other problems. If the person you received the home from died, and they died with a will, then they died with what we call testate. That means they left the house to you, it's in the will, you need to take it to the court and probate it. And that's a scary word for so many people. We don't want to have to probate the will. There's also a way to do that that's a quick and easy way, and it's called an administration or summary administration of the will. If the person did not have a will when they died, then they died intestate. And that's a whole nother problem, because what were their wishes, and they didn't write them down. So you'll have to go according to state law. So if you ever want to take the time to look it up and you're not totally bored by such things, you can look up the state law, and it's almost like a family tree. This person had property, and when they pass, if they don't have a will, then it goes to these people. And if these people aren't around, then it goes to these people. And if these people aren't around, it goes to these people. And it's pretty inclusive. So if they don't have a will, that's where you go, and hopefully you're on there. And hopefully there aren't too many people out this way, because it just complicates everything. Probate for a simple will can take about 6 months. The larger the estate, the longer it takes. The more people involved, the longer it takes, because you have to send things out, paperwork. Get all the brothers and sisters and everybody to sign off. Get all the kids to sign off. Whoever's possibly an heir, you have to find them and get that taken care of. So the larger the family, the longer that might take. In some cases, you can apply for a release of administration, which is what I mentioned a little bit ago. And that depends on some certain factors that we'll talk about in a little bit, and the value of the house. But it's a lot quicker. You can get that done much more quickly. Some people are afraid of the filing fees that might be involved, because you have to go to court, you have to pay an attorney, you have to pay all these fees. I know that in the state of Ohio, you can apply for what's called a waiver, and in certain circumstances, the court can say you don't have to pay those fees, or you don't have to pay them right now, and maybe make payment arrangements for them. But it's my understanding, and the experience of those that I've talked to, that you can pretty much get a waiver most of the time. So how do I apply for a summary release? You need the original will, if there was one, certified copy of the death certificate. And when you're gathering up information like death certificates, birth certificates, those types of things to prove things legally, you're going to need certified copies. In fact, the health department won't even give you one without it being certified, and it costs about $25 or $30. You're going to need a funeral bill or a paid receipt, because there's written into the law is some portions about who is to pay the funeral bill and was the funeral bill paid. You'll need the market or book value of the real property, motor vehicles, and other recreational vehicles. And by the way, There's some ways to transfer both your house and your motor vehicles that are very, very simple, and we'll talk about that again later. And any documents that might be required by your local court. One way to find that out is you can call the court, but an easier way to do is to look on the website. Most of the courts have websites at this point in time, and they also have some forms for you to try and do things easily. Mahoning County Court actually has a lawyer there. Probate court has a lawyer there a couple days a week to help you make your way through this. Once the summary release is granted, then you can use that court order and transfer all the assets to you. And then you have to update the real estate with the county auditor and the county. Oops, I tried to do the finger thing and it's not working. Release from administration. An estate can be released from administration if either of the following applies. The value of the assets of the estates is $35,000 or less, okay? There's a house in there. The value of the assets of the estate is $100,000 or less, and either of the following applies. The decedent devised and bequeathed in a valid will the assets of the decedent's estate to a person who is named in the will as the decedent's spouse, and the decedent is survived by that person. So what that says is the decedent left something, all of it, to their spouse. This decedent is survived by a spouse whose marriage to the decedent was solemnized in a manner consistent with Chapter 3103 of the Revised Code, and they died without a valid will. And so there's also another thing in the law. You can go and look it up. It's, again, like a little family tree. You know, somebody dies without a will, how much of the estate goes to the spouse? If there's just a spouse, how much goes to the spouse if it's a spouse and children, or if it's a spouse and children that are not that spouse's? It's fun. It's just like working through a little crossword puzzle or something, okay? So you have to look at this particular chapter to see how that goes. And this is called intestate succession.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
I don't know if you were taking questions, but you mentioned being solemnized in a manner
Solemnized.
consistent, meaning married legally.
Yes.
How does that work with common law marriages or people who have just, because we run into that situation sometimes where people, does that exist in, you know what I mean? Can you give some clarity to?
Okay, so common law marriage doesn't exist in Ohio anymore. I believe it was 1979 or thereabouts when they did away with it. I'm looking for like a confirmation nod from my boss, but
I thought it was in the 90s, but
I don't know. Anyway, it's gone.
But it doesn't exist anymore.
It does not exist anymore.
I'm saying that because people have said that.
Yes.
And they don't know that it no longer is a thing.
Yes. However, if let's just say for the sake of argument it was 1979 or 1989, whatever, if you established a common law marriage before that time, before they did away with it, and that means there had to be like so many years, and there has to be certain proof, and did they hold themselves out as husband and wives and certain things. So there's a lot of things there that you would have to look at, and you might be able to prove that there was a common law marriage at that time. Okay?
It was 1991.
See? You're much smarter than I am. Okay. So if there's no will, then what? Well, that's where you need to do a little bit of research. I said something earlier on about transfer on death affidavits. And so what is that? It's a legal document that you complete, and it says, you know, when I'm gone, I want so-and-so to have my property. Now, there's a little more legalese in there than what I just said, but basically that's what's in it. It says, when I pass, Kevin gets my house, okay? And it gets filed, and it gets filed with the deed, and when I die, Kevin gets the house. All he has to do is go and get a death certificate and prove that I am gone, and then they can take care of it and make sure that the house legally shows as having passed to him. How will you know if they filed one? Again, you're going to want to check with the recorder's office in the proper county, because it would be filed with the deed. If they did do that, then you need to file an affidavit of confirmation, and again, the certified copy of the death certificate, and it confirms your status as the beneficiary and transfers the title to you. Keep in mind that with the transfer on death affidavit, you still don't own the house and still can't access equity or resources that require ownership until the grantor passes. So I make it, today, and I run on down and I file it down there. And Kevin knows I filed it, and he's jumping up and down because he owns the house now, too, because he owns his own and he owns mine, he thinks. But he doesn't, because until I pass, he has no rights to that home, and I can undo that at any time. I'm sorry, but I'm losing my voice. A transfer on death can transfer property to more than one person. It must name the actual beneficiaries of it. So you can't just say my children. It has to say to my child, Mary Margaret Smith. It has to say James Lynn Thompson. It has to say every name of every child that you want to pass this property on to. You can have a contingency on it. So you can set it up so that when I pass on, it's going to pass on to Kenny Merkin, and if Kenny Merkin isn't around, it's going to go to Ryan Maxwell, okay? Because they were so good to me when I worked for them. That's why I'm leaving them my house. Those who have a survivorship can use a transfer on death affidavit. So if you remember, I talked a little bit about a joint survivorship deed that's kind of like my husband and I have. So if I pass away, he automatically gets the house. If he passes away, I automatically get the house. We can still go do a transfer on death affidavit, but it's not effective until we're both gone, okay? I already told him as soon as I go, he needs to run down and pass that on to my kids. Okay, so what if you have a deed, but there's a mistake in it? That's when you need to file what's called a correction deed. Some errors can be corrected by filing a correction deed, explicitly stating the mistake and how it is to be corrected, the reason for the correction, and details of the original deed, such as the volume and page in which it can be found in the recorder's office. Avoiding tangled titles. So one of the first things you could do, which we all put off forever because, we're scared, we don't want to think about death, we don't want to think about all of these things, is to make a will naming the beneficiary of your property. And the thing is, we don't need to, maybe we just need to change the way we think of things. Stop thinking about it as, I'm dead, I'm going to be dead, I'm dying, I don't want to think about that, okay? Think of it more as building intergenerational wealth. You want to make sure that what you have worked hard for and you have earned goes to the people you want to have it, okay? So think about it that way and go ahead and do your will. It's a gift to the people that you are going to leave behind. You can use a joint survivorship deed when you have the deed to your house made. And if we clear your title and get you a new title, you might want to think about how you want that title made up. You can complete and file a transfer on death affidavit. You can make certain that you have the proper legal name of the person you're leaving it to and that the proper legal description of the property is on all the documents. And the other thing is you want to make sure that somebody knows where this paperwork is. You should always talk with a lawyer about how to transfer your property or a professional that's knowledgeable about Medicaid benefits if you receive them. We have a public benefits team in our office, and they're very, very aware of what happens when people inherit property, whether they inherit a house or money or whatever. I know nothing about public benefits. What I know is enough to be dangerous, and that is if you inherit certain things and get your assets above a certain level, you can lose some of your Social Security benefits. So if you on Social Security disability or those types of things, then you're going to want to talk to a lawyer before you go and get those assets and know what you need to do when they come to you. If you receive Medicaid benefits before you die, your real estate could fall under the state of Ohio's Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. And that means where the state comes and gets your house to help pay off your medical bills. Everyone's afraid of that. They're like, I've got to pay my, take care of this, because if I die and they take the house to pay the medical bills, well, where's my husband going to live? Where's my mother going to live? Or my daughter that has lived with me all her life and taken care of everything. So there's provisions that help those people out too, okay? And if you end up in a nursing home or something, they can't, take your house right then and there. There's community spouses and other laws. But like I said, I know enough to be dangerous. I know enough to warn you, all right? So if you're involved in that, make sure you check it out. Okay. How is that? Anybody have any questions? No one? Okay.
Say you have a building nursing home or something, you have a home. How many years before that title, the house or whatever your property has to be in their name?
I can't answer that.
Can you
Remember
please-
I said I know enough to be dangerous? Okay?
Can you repeat the question?
What you're looking for is, she asked basically about a look-back period. And the look-back period is when you transfer property into somebody's name and then you end up in a nursing home. How many years do you have to do that? I do know that they just changed it. Someone in the audience is saying 7, but I don't know, okay? Kenny? I think it's 5. Kenny thinks it's 5. Do I hear 10? Kenny is actually an attorney. He might know. I don't know. You might know better. You may have just been involved in it. So that's one of the things, being a housing attorney, usually doing evictions and those kind of things, that I really, really am not certain about. Yes, sir?
How would a title search or title guarantee apply to what you're saying? Could you explain that?
Okay, so generally, the gentleman asked, how does a title search or title insurance apply to what we're talking about here? So generally, when you purchase a home, you want to have a title search done. And in some cases, before we put the property in your name, we might want to take a gander also. The property search is going to find out, are these actually the owners? Did they have clear ownership? Or was it a tangled title and then somebody somehow managed to get a deed? And that's what we call a cloud upon the title. Are there any clouds upon the title? It also will tell you, does somebody else own the mineral rights? Is somebody going to go put an oil well in your backyard? Those types of things. So a title search does all those kind of things. They go back a certain amount of years and look and see, is your title clear before you purchase it?
What's the time?
I'm sorry?
What's the timeline? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years
Timeline
for that clear?
on clouds? There is no timeline that I am aware of. I think once there's a cloud on the title, then you have to do whatever it takes to get that cloud off the title. Whether or not you can sell it with the cloud, knowing it, I'm sure there's a provision for, writing it into the deed somewhere. Hey, there's a cloud on this title, beware. Anything else?
Yes, did I understand you to say that once you pass with the will,
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder? I'm a little hard of hearing, and I have hearing aids, but I can't hear.
I understand you to say once you pass with the will, that you will leave, the person that you leave the house home to will automatically have to go to probate the will?
Your will has to be probated, yes, or doing the summary release from administration, which is much quicker and easier. Okay.
That usually takes 6 months, you said, once.
And generally, if it's a small estate, grandma's house, maybe a car, and $2,000 in the bank, it's not going to take long. Okay. Unless, of course, she lives in one of those big castles.
Patty, can I just add too that sorry, I'm Ryan Maxwell, sorry for the pop. If you have a will though, when you do a transfer of that, the board is probate.
I'm sorry.
If you have a transfer of that, or the home or the car, probate, you may still probate the will, but those matters would be those matters would be outside of probate because it's already transferred through the operation of the affidavits. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So there might be other, like personal property and stuff that had to be dealt with, or personal like accounts or something like that that might have to deal with through the probate process. But there's usually what's probate and non-probate assets. So things also like beneficiary designations on maybe 401ks or life insurance policies, those are non-probate because there's already a designated beneficiary. And then also through like bank accounts, you can always have something like a payable on death or something like that to avoid having to go get access through probate court. So there's ways to preemptively plan for situations where you may still have to go to probate, but there may not be like the big assets that would have to go through that process.
That's what I was thinking, I'm already thinking, okay, for past, I have a will, already left it to whoever that. So I'm thinking like, okay, the house is automatically hers. She don't have to do anything else, but she would have to probate the will.
That's correct. And
Okay,
so
that's
that's
what I
where
mean.
you might want to do joint survivorship, so that if something happens to you, it becomes hers. You might want to do the transfer on death affidavit, those types of things that take it out of the probate. And then you can do a transfer on death affidavit, not only for the house, but for the car, too. And that's helpful because you're not supposed to drive a car that's, the person who had it is deceased. So, if I want to leave my car to my grandson, rather than doing it in my will, I should do a transfer on death affidavit, and then my grandson can have the car the day I drop. Boom, got grandma's car. Okay? Lisa, you're laughing at me. We're talking about death here. I'm trying to keep it a little upbeat. Anything else? I see a hand.
Yeah, the second part of my question was,
Title guarantees?
yes.
Okay, that's a little bit like title insurance. And it's to cover you should there be something wrong with the title, a flaw, a cloud on the title that wasn't discovered, correct?
Yeah, that's for the title companies.
Yes, yes. That's not something we would do. Anything else? No?
One thing I walked into when I was coughing and I wanted to add. So if you have yes, I probably need this because I talk too softly. If there is a creditor judgment lien on the property, those are generally good for a 5-year period. Now, those can be renewed, or they could remain active again if they go dormant. But generally, the time frame for a creditor judgment lien on a property. So if you have a credit card company that takes you to court and they get a judgment against you, they can file a lien on property that you own, on real property. That's a 5-year time frame. And I think, I haven't done these in a while, so don't quote me on it, but I think they can be renewed up to twice for a 15-year period total for judgment liens.
But also, if you're filing, if you're probating property, they have to file that claim within, I believe it's 6 months of your passing and the will being filed. And if they don't file their claim within that period of time, correct me if I'm wrong, they're precluded from getting it. And so some of the other things that can be a cloud on your title might be like medical debt. You went to Cleveland Clinic and you had surgery and you didn't have any insurance. That's a bad example. They'll deal with you. The old Saints and Mr. Farmer, they put something on your house to get their money. Sometimes you can deal with those and get the cloud off, and I have done that in past. We've negotiated with people and said, this was grandma's house, it's her bill, the house isn't worth much. We tell stories and make it sound good and get them to forgive that. So there's times when you can get that stuff gone. If there's taxes on the house that grandma should have paid and didn't, you can sometimes work with the county tax department and see if they'll either reduce them, wipe them out, or put you into a payment plan. Same thing with the water bill. A lot of people don't know that, but it's called water rents, and the water bill at this point in time runs with the land. And so when you purchase a house or you inherit a house, and there's a past due water bill on it, then you're responsible for that water bill. Okay? And sometimes because you now own the house and you have this water bill, they might try to not turn your water on. So that's when you want to talk to them and see if you can make some kind of arrangements.
Excuse me, I have a question. My name is Joseph Smith. I'm 19. I've been studying water by real estate.
Could you slow down just a minute?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm nervous, everyone. I came late, so yeah, that's my excuse. I'm home from work right now. But I'm 19. I've been studying water by real estate, and me coming late, I don't know what's really going on. So I want to understand, like, what you guys here for? You guys here? You guys in the middle of the probate process, or just have someone really passing away? I just want to get a better understanding, really.
So we put together this presentation to talk about what are called tangled titles to real estate, because we're encountering so much of this as we're moving forward, and people are living in houses that someone said, here, it's your house. I don't want it anymore, you can have it, but they didn't take the legal steps to put the deed in their name. And so people are going to TCAP and to the cities and other places that have money to, say, put a roof on for you, but you have to be a homeowner. And so if you're not the homeowner, if your name's not on the deed, they can't get that assistance. So what we're talking about tonight is, how does this happen, what do you do about it, and how do you avoid it going forward?
I understand. Thank you. I just wanted to know. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If your name is on the deed with somebody else's, but you qualify for TCAP, would you still be able to get it if they didn't live in the house? Because the other two names on the house live out of state.
That's a TCAP question, okay? Because it would depend on where their funding is, and I don't know, Lisa, if you know the answer to this, but oftentimes it's just a requirement of the grants that they get this money, and so you have to look at how is the grant written. Just like sometimes the grant says, we won't help somebody that makes $500,000, but we'll help somebody that makes $50,000. That might be one of the criteria. It might be that, you know, all the people on the deed have to live in the house. I've encountered that before. Or there might be some way around it. I know that there have been times when people have gotten letters from the people that live out of town and say, just go ahead, fix it, whatever the requirements are. But that would be something that you would need to take up with whoever is going to do the repairs for you or give you the money you need to do that. Anything else? I guess, oh, there's a question?
What would be the difference in setting up a will versus setting up a trust, or do they kind of run hand in hand?
You know, I hear so often, in fact, my daughter's like, Mom, you got to set up a trust, you got to set up a trust. I don't have enough assets to set up a trust, okay? And most people don't. In my humble opinion, this is a lot of people trying to get you to come to them and set up a trust and pay them money when you don't necessarily need it. So you want to be careful about that. And like we said, there's different ways to transfer property so that you don't have to have it in a trust. And I can't answer all questions about trusts, or whether you need one or whether you don't, or when you need one, because that's not an area that I have practice in. So you just need to make sure that you have enough information and as going forward as to whether you actually need to do a trust. Do you guys have anything to add to that? Anything else? Yes? No? Well, I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I want to thank Lisa and TMP for putting this all together. And I'm quite excited about this project. I don't know about how everybody else feels about it, but to me, I see such a great need for it. I'm very active in my community. I live in Youngstown, and I see the need for this, and I hope going forward that we can help a lot of people get property into their names and get the resources and the equity that they should have out of their homes. Okay? Thank you.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
There was an online question.
Okay.
Does a person need to retain a lawyer
to file transfer upon death for cars and a home?
No, there are actually forms online that you can use, okay? You probably want to go to the probate court that is in your community, your county, because sometimes the counties have just a little, they've tweaked them a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're using the proper forms. And I also believe there are forms on the Ohio State Bar Association website for some of these things. I haven't been on there lately, but you can look on there and get some of those.
Yes, my question is, if you have a house and you leave it to more than one person,
Mhm.
and they take out a loan, but you're in the nursing home, so when the nursing home take your house, what recourse do the other people that's supposed to go to the house, supposed to go to?
Okay, I'm a little confused because you started out with saying that person took out a loan.
Say, okay, they have a house and they leave it to all their children,
Okay.
but one of the children take out a loan. So what recourse do the other people that's supposed to be inherited?
That's kind of a mess. It causes problems between siblings. If they were able to get a loan, not being the sole owner, and they didn't pay it, and the lien went on the house, then when the house was to be sold, that money would come out of any profit, okay? And that, if they don't pay it, could end up in foreclosure, which means the other people could very well lose out on their equity in the house. Anything to add to that?
I would say if that's a situation we're into, though, we should call our office. Because that's
Probably.
It's gonna be very specific.
Yeah, yeah. But in general, it's a mess. Anything else? Yes, ma'am, sir.
I've owned the house for 23 years,
Mm-hmm.
paid all the taxes on it, and I got to refinance on the veterans loan with my father-in-law, and my wife, and myself, and my father-in-law. I'm the only
Oh,
one that,
okay, this is getting into the specifics, and we asked at the beginning that you not get into the specifics because there's no attorney-client privilege here, and we are not your attorneys.
oh, no, I have
So,
an attorney.
okay, so were you just checking his advice? I don't.
Oh, yeah, I had them, and, well, what it was, I applied for a lead abatement.
Mhm.
They told me that I couldn't get it because the house wasn't in my name on the deed, but on the Veterans Administration loan, it's on that. So it was a controversy as to whether they tried to say that the house wasn't mine, and I've been paying on it for 23 years.
That's
All
a,
paid off, everything's clear, I took probate when my wife passed.
that's a tangled title.
Yeah, that's a tangled thing.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Anybody out there and, no? All right, well, I think I already said goodbye once. I thank you again, and hope we get to do this another time.
So did everybody find this helpful? Okay, I appreciate that. If there are some suggestions that you all have on ways that we can do things a little different or improve, or other questions, additional things that you might want to ask, you can reach us at Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership. You can email us at tnpwarren.org. Okay, that is T as in Trumbull, N as in neighborhood, and P as in partnership, warren.org. Okay? Appreciate your time, and I will turn it back over to Pastor Todd. Oh, one additional thing. Back in the back by the sign-in sheets, I left emergency home repair flyers. My great colleague, Caitlin, is here, and she manages that program at Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership. For homeowners that meet the income criteria, they can do a number of repairs, do some handicap accessibility, and replace roofs and furnaces, and there's an emergency winter program. So, I mean, there's a pretty substantial waiting list, but if you meet the criteria, it is definitely worth looking into. So be sure you take a flyer, go over it, and if you qualify, or if you think you're appropriate, give us a call, and we'll get you started on that process. Thank you all for your time. I'm going to turn it back over to Pastor Todd. Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you. Can you help me thank Community Legal Aid, Ms. Patty Dugan, and Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership for bringing this phenomenal resource to our community. I'm very, very grateful to them for sharing this vital information with us and kickstarting what should be a conversation in all of our families and all of our homes. Not only us, but people that we know. We should not wait until the last minute, and all of us have been in a situation with a grandparent, a parent, a spouse, an unexpected passing. I know my wife and I have been there. We've been there with grandparents, with her mother, with situations where you have to start from scratch and you're already behind the 8 ball. And again, you're tied up in that probate situation. So when you get the knowledge, you have the power. And now we have the power to set a different future. And this is very personal for me and for this church, because we sit in a neighborhood that has suffered from this very issue for decades. If you drove in here and you're not from the West Side, the 4th Street, 3rd Street, 2nd Street, 1st Street world, you don't know what it used to look like once. And a part of that was the inability to maintain properties in the proper hands. A lot of other things happened, disinvestment, economic turmoil, and all of that. But a major factor was grandma or mom or father dies. It was such a trouble making sure it stayed in the right hands that often that property would just be lost. And TMP will tell you, and I'll speak on their behalf, as Kevin said a few weeks ago, in the land bank, they really don't want to tear down these homes. But they often end up in that situation after having sat for so long. And then when we lose that wealth opportunity, somebody else picks it up. So we want to preserve as much as we possibly can. So thank you again. It's a passion of mine in our church that we don't just inspire our community, but we educate and empower our community. And so please, this is online. It's not too long for people to sit down in the afternoon and take a look at. And please check out TMP or Community Legal Aid for any further questions or specific things. They'll be able to let you know if you have a case or a path forward in some of those issues that you have or have encountered with this or some other legal issue. And we're very grateful that they've been partners in this. We do have refreshments downstairs, and I really wish you would go down and grab something, get something to drink. Will you stick around for a few minutes in case someone has questions? All right. So you got access to some expertise in the room. And again, they'll tell you what they can and tell you what they can't tell you. And what they need to do to assist you or where you might need to go from here. Good to see my friend Elder Clay from Hoyt Street Church of God in Christ Flourishing Ministries. Love you, appreciate you all. The legacy of Elder Morgan, definitely making sure that the community is owned by us. And he did a phenomenal job over at Hoyt Street, and so I'm grateful to see that going. If there are no other questions or comments, we're going to do what I always do, and that's end in prayer and receive a blessing before we go. And then you're welcome to go to the Undercroft right down the stairs, and we have tables and chairs set up for you to grab. If you're watching online, you have to eat at home, whatever you got in your fridge. Those are your refreshments. Sorry. But let's bow our heads. Father, we are so grateful for people who can share with us this knowledge, that we can better our futures. We can preserve our properties. We can improve our communities. And by doing that, uplift families in our city. We thank you for the wealth of wisdom that has been gained here, and that this is a kickstart, a starting point for many in this room and many online and others who might call or email or make a contact and find out what they should do to make sure that their family and their assets are secure. We ask that you continue to give us that heart to follow through, to continue on, so that this night won't be in vain. We thank you for all who have come, all who have shared, and even for the refreshments that we will receive and share in conversation together later on. As we leave this place, we pray for traveling mercies to our separate destinations, that our home might be found well and in good order. This we thank you for in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. God bless you all, and thank you for coming.